The fire reached the tree line before Clara reached the ridge. She ran anyway, boots slipping on ash, her baby bound tight against her chest, smoke tearing at her lungs like a living thing. Behind her, the wind shifted, and the flames obeyed. Ahead, the canyon dropped away with nowhere left to hide. A single rider cut through the heat, raining hard, reaching down without asking her name. In the Wild West, help never comes clean. It always comes with a cost. By dawn, the fire was out, but the danger wasn't. The town wanted her land. The law wanted her child. Papers replaced bullets, and men who never touched a torch decided who deserved to survive. Clara stood in the open, refusing to kneel, forcing one silent rancher to choose whether justice mattered more than safety. When the law turns its back, what does a good man owe a broken woman and her child? Subscribe for more Western tales, watch until the end, and comment the city you're watching from. Fire moved faster than thought. Clara ran with the baby pressed to her chest, smoke clawing at her throat, heat licking the backs of her legs. Pine pitch popped like gunshots. The ground pitched under her boots. The world narrowed to breath, weight, and the small body tucked under her chin. Knox whimpered once, then went quiet, and that was worse than screaming. She cut left where the trees thinned, then right when the wind shifted and the flames bent like a living thing. Ash fell thick as snow. The air tasted of copper. A trunk exploded ahead, resin flaring blue-white, and she dropped to a knee, shielding the baby with her coat. The coat smoked. She smelled it. She smelled her own hair. She ran again. A path opened, bare rock, scraped clean by old floods. It looked like mercy. She took 3 steps, and a burning pine crashed down, sealing the way, sparks scattering like insects. The corridor closed. Heat wrapped around her. The fire didn't roar. It breathed. It waited. She ducked under a thick barked fir and pressed into the shadow at its roots, earth cool against her palms. She rocked without thinking, mouth to the baby's ear. "Hush," she said. A lie. The fire crept closer. The wind changed. The fur began to sweat sap. "I can't carry him any farther." Her hand brushed the small tin at her ribs. The wildfire box. She'd stuffed it into her coat when the sky turned red, fingers shaking, because some things you grab without knowing why. She shifted the baby higher, and the box bit into her skin. It was heavier than it had any right to be. A sound cut through the heat, hooves hard and close. Clara lifted her head. A horse broke the smoke, black against orange. A rider bent low over the neck. The man didn't shout. He threw a rope. It landed at her feet. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat, like this was a job and not a miracle. "Don't let go of the kid." The rope went around her waist. She braced, one arm clamped around Knox, the other finding the line. The pull came sudden and brutal. She slid, then bounced, stones tearing at her palms. A wall of flame leaned in, heat flattening the air, and then she was through, dragged across bare rock, smoke tearing loose behind her like a curtain. They didn't stop until the fire fell back, sulking, robbed of wind. The man cut the rope, hands fast. He checked the baby first, fingers at the tiny ribs, an ear to the mouth. He nodded once. "Still here," he said. Clara sagged. Her knees gave. He caught her by the elbow and hauled her to the saddle. "Up," he said. "Now." She climbed because there was nothing else left to do. The horse lunged. The fire chased them for a breath, then turned away. The ranch came out of the smoke like a dark ship, fences blackened at the edges, buildings crouched low against the wind. Lanterns burned in the yard, their light warm and wrong against the night. The man swung down and took the baby again, careful, practiced. He didn't ask her name. Inside, heat hit her face and she flinched. Someone reached for the baby, and the man shook his head once. "Not him," he said. "Blanket. Water." Orders fell like stones into a pond. People moved. Clara tried to stand. The room tilted. "Ma'am," the man said. "Sit." She sat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. He knelt to wet a cloth and pressed it to Knox's mouth, counted under his breath. The numbers steadied him. He handed the baby back only when the breathing evened. A hymn drifted in from somewhere, low, uncertain. Someone had hung a wreath crooked over a door, pine needles already browning at the tips. It was December, she remembered. Of course it was. The year had come to its end with a knife. A woman pressed a mug into Clara's hands. "Small sips." Clara drank and burned her tongue and welcomed the pain because it meant she was alive. The man stood. He looked at the door, then at the baby, then away. "I'll have a room ready," he said, to no one in particular. He paused, fingers tapping the wood of the table, once, twice, then he left. Clara lay on a narrow bed with Knox curled against her, counting his breaths the way the man had. She could hear voices in the yard, the scrape of boots, the clink of tools. The fire had given up, but something else had noticed her. She knew that feeling. Hunger recognized hunger. The tin box burned against her ribs. She slipped it free and held it between her palms. Warm now. She didn't open it. Not yet. She tucked it back and pulled the blanket higher, over the baby's ear where the small mark lay hidden. Don't be seen. Sleep came in pieces. Each time she woke, the room was darker, then lighter, then dark again. At one point, a shadow filled the doorway. The man stood there, hat in his hands, watching the baby breathe. He didn't step in. "You can stay the night," he said. "Roads closed, fires still jumpy." "And after?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He set the hat on a peg, straightened a chair that didn't need it. "We'll see," he said. "Morning tells the truth." Morning brought ash on the windowsill and the smell of wet earth. Clara sat up and swung her legs down, dizzy. Outside, men moved along the fence, shoring, hammering. The man, Beck, someone had said his name like a warning, stood with his back to the house, scanning the hills. A rider came at a canter and slowed, dust ghosting around the horse's legs. Beck took the paper without looking at the man who brought it. He read, jaw tightening, then folded it small. Clara watched from the doorway. The baby stirred. She held him closer. Beck turned. Their eyes met. He didn't smile. "They're asking about the land that burned," he said. "And the water." Her throat closed. She nodded once. The truth had arrived early. "I didn't leave it," she said. "The land." "I didn't say you did," he said. "I said they're asking." A gust lifted ash from the yard and it drifted between them. Somewhere a bell rang once, thin and hopeful. Clara touched the tin under her coat and felt its edge, sharp as a promise. She stood in the doorway of a place that wasn't hers, holding a child the world would try to take, and the morning leaned in like a question. Morning did not soften the land. It only showed the damage more clearly. Clara stepped out with the baby tight against her, the yard still breathing smoke. Fence posts leaned like tired men. A trough held ash instead of water. Beck stood where he had been at dawn, hat low, eyes on the hills as if they might move on their own. A rider waited near the gate, horse sweating, patience gone. He did not look at Clara. He looked at the house, counted windows, measured space. Beck walked him off a few steps. Their voices stayed low. Clara caught pieces. Water, survey, claim. Words that sounded clean and cut anyway. The rider handed over another paper. Beck read it slower this time, then folded it again, neat as a habit. The rider tipped his hat at no one and left. Beck came back. "They filed," he said. "Say the burn counts as abandonment." Clara felt the word land. Abandonment. It sounded like a choice. She swallowed. "It doesn't," she said. "I was there. I ran." "I know," he said. "They don't care." A man crossed the yard carrying a bucket, careful not to spill. Another hammered a brace into place. Work went on because work had to. Beck glanced at the baby, then away. "You can go," he said. "I'll put a horse under you. Town's still standing." "And the water?" she asked. Beck's mouth tightened. "That's what they want." She nodded once. She had known that before the fire, before the smoke made the world small. She had known it when the creek ran thin in summer and men rode past slower than they needed to. Water made liars honest. Clara did not move. "I can work," she said. "I can read a ledger. I can count. I can keep accounts straight." Beck shook his head. "This isn't a job." "It's my life," she said, and surprised herself with how steady it came out. He watched her a long second. The yard sounded louder. A hammer rang. A horse snorted. Somewhere a hymn found its way back. A single voice unsure of the words. "Stay the day," Beck said. "Fire's not done. After that—" He stopped. He didn't finish things he couldn't control. Clara took the day. She kept to the edge of the house, the baby on her shoulder, eyes open. A woman brought bread and pressed it into her hands without speaking. Clara ate standing up, crumbs sticking to her fingers, grateful and angry all at once. She counted steps between doors. She noted which men looked at the hills and which looked at her. The difference mattered. At midday, Beck called her to the table. Papers lay spread, corners weighted with nails. He stood back like the wood might bite. "You said you read," he said. She sat. The baby slept. Clara read. She read the words the way you read a storm, looking for what was missing. Dates slid past. Names repeated. A line about water rights bent the wrong way. She tapped it with her finger. "This," she said. "They can't take this unless they prove I left before the fire." Beck leaned in, close enough she could smell smoke on his coat. "They'll try." She nodded. "Then don't let them." His eyes flicked to the baby, back to the paper. "You don't know who you're fighting." "I do," she said. I've been fighting him longer than you think." A shout cut the yard. Men moved. Beck straightened. "Inside," he said. A wagon rolled up with 2 men riding high, coats clean for the season. They smiled too early. One took his hat off and did not lower his eyes. "Morning," he said. "We're here about a claim." Beck did not invite them in. "You can talk from there." They did. They talked about surveys and lines and generosity. They talked about helping a woman who had lost everything. They talked until words stacked up and fell over each other. Clara stepped out beside Beck. She did not introduce herself. "I didn't abandon my land," she said. "It burned while I was on it." One of the men smiled wider. "Tragic," he said. "But the law—" She held up the baby. The child stirred, mouth opening, then closed again, breathing steady. "The law can see me," she said. "I'm standing right here." The smile thinned. The men left without bowing. Beck watched the dust settle. "You shouldn't have done that." "I should have," she said. That night the wind rose. Lanterns swung. Someone added another brace to the door. Beck walked the fence twice. Clara lay awake counting breaths again, then counting the space between sounds. The tin pressed into her ribs like a reminder. She slid it out and held it. The lid rasped when she eased it open. Inside, papers lay folded tight, edges singed. Receipts. A map drawn careful and small. The creek marked in blue pencil, the bend just so. A note in her hand, cramped, written when there had still been time. She closed the box. "If I lose this, I lose him." Near midnight, hooves sounded where they shouldn't. Beck was moving before the sound finished. Clara was on her feet with the baby before fear found her throat. A shadow crossed the yard, then another. Wood creaked. A spark flashed and died. Beck's voice cut the dark. "That's far enough." A man laughed. "Just looking." A shot cracked, high and clean. The laugh stopped. Footsteps ran. A horse screamed once, then the night swallowed it. Beck came back breathing hard. "They won't try the house," he said. "Not yet." "Yet," she said. He nodded. "Yet." Dawn came pale and thin. The fire was gone. The question remained. A woman brought Clara a coat that fit better than it should have. "Cold mornings," she said, as if apologizing for the world. Clara took it. She did not say thank you. Gratitude could be a trap. Beck waited by the gate. A horse stood saddled. "Town," he said. "We'll file. You talk. I'll listen." "And after?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "After, we'll know what kind of men we're dealing with." They rode out, together, the baby bundled between them, the land still smoking behind. At the creek crossing, Beck slowed. The water ran low, whispering over stone, stubborn as a prayer said under breath. Clara touched the tin under her coat and felt its weight answer back. She looked at the man who had pulled her from the fire, at the road that led to law, at the water that led to everything else. She stayed on the horse. Town sat low and gray, as if it had decided not to be noticed. Smoke from a dozen chimneys hung close to the ground. Bells rang once, then again, not for prayer, but for time. Beck reined in at the edge and waited while Clara slid down with the baby, boots finding mud instead of ash. The street watched them. Windows held their breath. Inside the clerk's office, ink smelled sharp. Paper waited in stacks, patient as stones. A man behind the desk looked at Beck first, then at Clara, then at the child. He took his time. He liked it. "Name," he said. Clara gave it. The man wrote slow. Too slow. Beck leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, hat low. He said nothing. Silence was his way of keeping the floor from tilting. "The claim says abandonment," the clerk said, tapping the paper. "Fire complicates things." "It clarifies them," Clara said. "I was there." The clerk smiled without showing teeth. "Proof?" She laid the tin on the counter. The sound it made was small and hard. She opened it and slid the papers out, careful not to let the map show first. Receipts. Dates. A line of blue pencil where water bent. The clerk's eyes sharpened. He took the papers and held them to the light, as if the truth might be thin. He frowned at the dates, then frowned harder at the map. He did not look at Beck. "This creek," he said, "runs through contested ground." "It runs through my ground," Clara said. A man at the door shifted. Boots scraped. Someone coughed. The clerk stacked the papers again. "I'll file," he said. "Hearing will be set." "When?" Beck asked. The clerk shrugged. "Depends." Depends meant money. Depends meant waiting. Clara felt the baby move and steadied him with a hand. The clerk slid the papers back across the counter, all but the map. He held that a beat longer than he needed to. "We'll keep this," he said. "No," Clara said. The clerk looked up. "It's standard." "It's mine," she said. Beck pushed off the wall. "Give it back." The clerk weighed the moment, then returned the map. "Fine," he said. "Keep it close." Outside, the street let out the breath it had been holding. Beck did not mount. He walked a few steps, stopped, and faced her. "You don't argue like someone asking for mercy," he said. "I'm not," she said. They passed the church on the way back. A small tree stood inside the door, candles unlit in daylight. Someone had tied a ribbon to the handle. Clara paused, the baby warm against her collarbone. She dipped her fingers in the basin by the door, left a wet mark on the wood, nothing more. "Lord, keep us unseen." On the ride home, the wind carried voices. Beck slowed where the road narrowed between rock and creek. He lifted a hand. The horse stilled. Men waited ahead, 3 of them, coats clean, smiles ready. One stepped out, palms open. "Trouble to stop you," he said, "just passing a message." Beck did not answer. The man's eyes flicked to Clara. "Kind offer," he said, "to take care of a woman in need. Some folks might say it looks like interference." Clara felt the words slide toward her and step around her like water. She said nothing. Beck spoke once. "Say what you came to say." The man smiled wider. "Withdraw the filing. There's compensation." "No," Beck said. The smile fell. "Then there are other ways." Beck's hand did not go to his gun. It rested on the saddle horn, easy. "Not today," he said. They rode through without being touched. The men watched until the bend hid them. The creek whispered again, thin and stubborn. Back at the ranch, the air had changed. The fire was gone, but its ghost lingered. Men set extra lanterns. A gate stayed closed that was usually open. The woman who brought bread crossed herself when she passed the baby and said nothing. Beck took Clara to the small office off the kitchen. He shut the door. The room smelled of ink and leather. A ledger lay open, numbers marching in careful rows. "You should leave," he said. Clara did not answer right away. She sat and eased knocks down, counting breaths again. She closed the tin and slid it under the ledger. "You already said that," she said. "It didn't make it true." "You don't know what they'll do," he said. She looked at him. "Neither do you." He rubbed his jaw, fingers catching on the scar. "Staying ties you to me." "It already did," she said. He laughed once and short. "That's what I'm afraid of." Night fell early. The wind carried cold now, clean and sharp. Someone hung a small wreath in the kitchen. Someone else put a candle in the window, one flame against a lot of dark. Clara sat at the table and wrote, hand steady. She wrote what had happened. She wrote what she had seen. She folded the paper and slid it into the tin, under the map. "If I disappear, this remains." A knock sounded at the back door. Beck rose. Clara did too, the baby in her arms. A man stood outside, hat in his hands, eyes down. He smelled of horse and shame. "I was told to look," he said, "not to burn." Beck said nothing. "I saw the child," the man went on. "I won't come back." Beck studied him, then nodded once. The man left, walking, not riding. "That's how it goes," Beck said quietly. "Some will stop." "And the rest?" Clara asked. Beck did not answer. Later, when the house slept, Clara heard the soft sound of metal. She slipped from the bed and found Beck at the table, a revolver apart in his hands, each piece laid out neat. He did not look up. "You don't sleep," she said. He set a piece down. "I sleep after." "After what?" "After the choice, Piton," he said. She set the baby down and reached for the tin. She opened it and spread the papers between them, the map last. She traced the blue line with her finger. "This bend," she said. "If they take it, they take the summer." Beck leaned in. His breath warmed, her knuckles. "If we hold it," he said, "they'll come harder." She met his eyes. "Then don't let them choose the ground." He watched her a long moment. Something eased. Something hardened. "You learn fast," he said. "I had to," she said. Outside, snow began to fall, light and tentative. Ash turned clean by cold. It settled on the fence rails and the scarred ground alike, not choosing sides. The candle in the window burned steady. Beck put the revolver back together and slid it away. "We'll file again," he said. "And we'll prepare." "For what?" she asked. "For them to test us," he said. She nodded. The baby breathed. The snow kept falling. The land waited, and so did the men who wanted it. Snow did not quiet the ranch. It sharpened it. Clara woke before light, the baby warm and heavy against her, the window pale with the first sift of white. She counted breaths. She always did. Outside, men moved without talking, boots careful on frozen boards. A gate creaked once and was stilled. The land listened. She dressed in the coat that fit too well and stepped into the kitchen. Beck stood at the table, hands flat on the wood, staring at the map. The blue line cut through the paper like a vein. He did not look up when she came in. "They'll test the water," he said, "before anything else." "How?" she asked. He folded the map and slid it back into the tin. "They'll touch what feeds us and see who flinches." The day held its breath. By noon the creek thinned to a whisper. A trough stood empty where it had been full at dawn. The horses stamped and blew, confused. Clara tasted iron at the back of her mouth. Beck walked the line to the bend and came back with his jaw set. "Gate upstream's been worked," he said. "Not cut. Shifted." "Enough to starve us," she said. "Enough to make a point." She followed him down to the creek. The water slid low over stone, honest and stubborn. Beck knelt and pressed his palm to the current. He stood without shaking the cold from his hand. "We put it back," he said. "And when they come?" she asked. "They will," he said. Men gathered without being called. No one asked why. Clara watched hands move. Ropes, iron, wood, work that knew itself. She took the baby and stood where she could see the bend and the road at once. Snow kept falling, light as ash, turning the burn clean without erasing it. A rider appeared on the far hill and stopped. He watched. Then another. Then a third. They did not come closer. They did not leave. Beck did not look at them. He set his shoulder and heaved. Wood groaned. Water surged back into its old shape, louder now, angry at being told no. The horses drank. Someone laughed once and cut it short. "Enough," Beck said. The riders turned their horses and went. That night the house held heat like a kept promise. Someone brought in a small tree, bent at the top, and set it by the hearth. A candle burned in the window again. Clara fed the baby and hummed the only tune she remembered all the way through. Beck sat with his back to the wall, listening without showing it. "I won't hide him," she said, when the humming ended. "I won't ask you to," Beck said. Wind rose. A board thumped once and settled. Snow slid from the eaves. Clara slept in pieces, each one short. Near morning, hooves sounded hard and close. Beck was up before the sound finished. Clara was on her feet, the baby against her shoulder. She did not panic. Panic was loud. A man stood at the gate, alone, hat off, breath white. He did not smile. "They've set a hearing," he said. "Soon." Beck said nothing. "And there's talk," the man went on, "of making an son example." Beck nodded once. "That's all?" The man hesitated. "They want the map." Clara felt the tin burn through her coat. She stepped forward. "They can't have it." The man looked at the baby and then at the snow. "They don't care," he said, and left. Beck shut the gate himself. "You should go," he said again, softer this time. Clara shook her head. "Not now." "Not ever?" he asked. She thought of the creek, of the bend that kept the summer alive, of the tin with its edges sharp as truth. "Not while it's still a choice," she said. The hearing came faster than promised. The room smelled of damp wool and ink. Beck stood behind her. She stood straight. The baby slept through it, a small miracle she did not name. Words fell like stones. abandonment, interference, good faith. Clara answered when she was asked. She did not when she wasn't. Beck spoke once, and only to say no. When it ended, nothing had ended. That was the trick of it. Outside, the snow had stopped. The air felt hollow. Beck took the reins and turned toward home. Halfway back, the road narrowed and the creek ran close again. He slowed. 3 men stepped out. Not the clean-coated kind. These wore work and had nothing to lose. One held a torch unlit. Another rolled his shoulders like a man about to lift something heavy. Beck stopped. "You're far from where you should be." "We were told to look," the one with the torch said. "Not to burn." "Then look," Beck said. The man's eyes slid to Clara. "You could make this easier." Clara shifted the baby higher. "You could walk away." The torch flared to life. Beck moved first. He kicked snow into the flame and it hissed out. The second man rushed and went down hard, breath knocked clean away. The third grabbed at the baby's blanket and missed, fingers scraping cloth instead of flesh. Beck's gun spoke once, high and clean, and the sound went through the cold like a crack in glass. The men ran. Beck stood shaking, breath ragged, eyes locked on the place where the torch had died. He did not look at Clara. She touched his arm. He flinched and then stilled. "They'll come again," he said. "Yes," she said. "And harder." "Yes." He looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing the line of her jaw for the first time. "You don't back away." She thought of the fire breathing, of the rope biting her waist, of the baby's breath counted into daylight. "I do," she said, "when it's wrong." They rode home in silence. The ranch held its shape. Lanterns burned. Men watched the hills. Someone saw bread on the table and cut it without asking. Later, when the house had settled, Beck laid the map out again. He traced the blue line with his finger, stopped at the bend. "We can hold this," he said, "but it will cost." "What kind?" she asked. "Names," he said. "Sleep." She nodded. "Then spend them." He looked at the baby. "And him?" She held Knox closer. "He's the reason," she said, "not the price." Outside, bells rang once from town, thin and far. Clara crossed herself without thinking and stopped, embarrassed. Beck did not comment. "Tomorrow," he said, "we prepare the fence and the books." "And tonight?" she asked. He set the map away and closed the tin. "Tonight, we keep the candle lit." She stood by the window and watched the flame hold against the dark. Snow began again, gentle as forgiveness. The land did not forgive. It remembered. And it waited. The candle burned low, but did not gutter. Clara watched it from the doorway, flame steady against a draft that found every crack. Snow whispered against the glass. The baby slept with one fist closed, as if holding something he might drop if he opened it. Beck was already outside when she rose. Men moved along the fence line, checking posts, tapping iron. No one spoke. The creek kept its thin promise. The bend held. A rider came before breakfast, slow and careful, hat tipped low. He did not cross the gate. He waited to be seen. Beck went to him alone. Clara stayed back with the baby, counting the space between them, counting the seconds it took for a man to decide what kind of trouble he was willing to bring. "Message," the rider said, "from town." Beck took the paper and did not open it. Say it. They want the books, the writer said. Accounts, receipts, proof of use. Beck's jaw tightened. We have them. They know, the writer said. They think you won't show. Beck nodded once. They're wrong. The writer left. Beck stood where he was a moment longer, then folded the paper and put it in his coat. He did not look at Clara until he was halfway back. They'll come for the ledger, he said. Clara felt the word settle. Ledger meant numbers. Numbers meant truth that could be bent if you let it be. She followed him inside, set the baby down, and pulled the tin from beneath the table. She opened it and slid out the papers she had added. Dates, times, names. She placed them beside the ledger without being asked. I can help, she said. Beck hesitated. You already are. No, she said. I can help more. He watched her hands. They were steady. If you touch it, he said, you own it. She met his eyes. Good. They worked through the morning. Clara read aloud, caught a missing mark, a line that didn't line up with the season. Beck corrected where iron had worn the truth thin. Together they made the thing whole. When they finished, the ledger lay heavier than before. Near noon, hooves again, this time more than one. The men did not stop at the gate. They came in with a confidence borrowed from somewhere else. Beck stepped into the yard. You're early. A man with clean gloves smiled. We're thorough. He gestured, and another man reached for the door. No, Beck said. The man's smile thinned. We have authority. Clara moved to the doorway with the baby on her shoulder. She did not block it. She did not step aside. You can see us, she said. You can't come in. The man's eyes flicked to the child and back. Ma'am, he said. This is legal business. So is breathing, she said. And you're standing in my air. The men laughed, then stopped when Beck didn't. He took a step closer. You can talk here, he said, or you can leave. The man with the gloves nodded to his companion. The books, he said. Beck did not move. The companion reached again. Beck's hand came up not to his gun, but to the man's wrist. He twisted just enough. The man swore and backed away. That's enough, the one with the gloves said. We'll be back with paper. You already have paper, Beck said. It won't help you. They left, dust and breath hanging where they had been. Clara shut the door with care. Her hands shook now. She waited until they stopped. They'll try another way, Beck said. Yes, she said. That afternoon, a woman from town arrived with a basket and eyes too kind. She set the basket down and clasped her hands. I heard, she said, about the baby, about the fire. Clara thanked her. The woman lingered, asked questions that did not sound like questions. Clara answered with pieces that fit and nothing more. When the woman left, Beck watched the road. She'll talk, he said. Everyone does, Clara said. Night brought a different cold. The wind fell away, leaving the world brittle. Clara wrote by lamplight, adding to the tin, making the truth thicker. Beck sat across from her, cleaning his revolver without hurry. He watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. You should rest, he said. After, she said. He nodded. After. A knock came, soft and wrong. Beck looked at the door, then at Clara. She lifted the baby and stood back. Beck opened it a hand's width. A man stood there with his hat crushed in his hands. His eyes were red from cold or something else. "I won't do it," he said. "They want the ledger. They want me to say I saw you leave before the fire." Beck said nothing. "They'll pay," the man went on. "They'll pay more if I swear." Clara stepped into the light. "And if you don't?" The man swallowed. "They'll ruin me." She nodded. "They already have." Beck watched her, something sharp and new in his eyes. Clara held the baby higher. "Tell the truth," she said. "It costs less in the end." The man looked at the child and closed his eyes. "I'll say what I saw," he said. "Nothing else." He left without waiting for thanks. Beck shut the door and leaned his head back against it. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," she said. "I did." The next day, the creek dropped again. Not much. Enough. Beck sent men upstream. They came back with empty hands and tight mouths. "Gates untouched," one said, "but the channel's been worked lower down." "Quiet," Beck said. They moved before dusk, lanterns hooded. Snow squeaked under boots. Clara stayed behind, pacing, counting. The baby woke and fussed. She fed him and hummed, low. "I won't fail him." Shots cracked once, then again, far off. Clara pressed her palm to the window. The sound stopped. Minutes stretched. Beck returned with blood on his sleeve that wasn't his. "They ran," he said. "We fixed it." "Who?" she asked. He shook his head. "Hired." The words settled like ash. The hearing came again, heavier this time. The room filled. The ledger lay open on the table. Clara spoke when she had to, her voice even. The man from the door spoke too, his eyes on the floor. The clerk frowned. The gloves did not smile. When it ended, the decision did not. That was the point. Outside, Beck exhaled. "They'll delay," he said. "Good," Clara said. "Delay lets people see." He looked at her, surprised. "You think like a landowner." She adjusted the baby's blanket. "I think like a mother." They rode back under a sky clearing too fast. The ranch stood waiting. Lanterns flared. Someone had cut evergreen and laid it along the mantel, green stubborn against soot. Beck set the ledger down and closed it. "They'll come for it again," he said. "Not tonight." "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. She placed the tin beneath the ledger, then slid both into the drawer and locked it. She kept the key. Outside, the creek whispered its thin song. The candle burned. The land did not forgive. It counted. The knock did not come. That was how Clara knew it had changed. She woke to quiet so complete it rang. Snow lay smooth in the yard, no tracks where there should have been some. The candle had burned down to a nub without guttering. Knock slept heavy against her chest, warm and certain. She counted breaths anyway. Outside, the creek did not whisper. Clara sat up. She listened again. Nothing. No water over stone. No wind in the eaves. Silence like a held fist. She was on her feet before fear could dress itself. She wrapped the baby tight and went to the door. The latch lifted too easily. Cold bit her face. She crossed the yard fast, boots slipping, heart already ahead of her. The creek lay bare. Stone showed where water should have been, dark and slick like a wound opened and left to air. Upstream, the channel had been cut clean and deep, the bend gutted and turned. This wasn't a test. This was a theft done in daylight, careful and final. Beck came out behind her, coat half on, gun in hand. He took it in with one look. "They didn't ask," he said. "No," Clara said. "They took." Men gathered, breath white, faces tight. One kicked at the frozen mud and swore. Another knelt and touched the stone like it might answer. Beck straightened. "Get the teams," he said. "Now." "They'll be waiting," someone said. "I know," Beck said. "That's why we're going." Clara stepped closer. "If you go loud," she said, "they'll say you started it." Beck looked at her, really looked. "If I don't go," he said, "we don't last the week." She nodded. There it was, the choice without clean edges. "Then go quiet," she said, "and take the books." His jaw worked. "You stay." She shook her head. "No." He stared at the baby. "It's not a place for It's already a place for him," she said. They made it that way. A pause. Snow drifted down, slow as ash. Beck nodded once. "You don't get off the horse." "I won't," she said. They moved before full light. Lanterns hooded, iron wrapped. No shouting. No prayers said aloud. Clara rode between Beck and the dark. The baby bound close, her breath steady because it had to be. They reached the cut just as the men upstream finished setting the gate. Water pooled behind boards and iron, fat and patient. A man with clean gloves stood there, coat buttoned, watching like this was weather. Beck did not dismount. "Put it back," he said. The man smiled. "You're too late." Clara felt the baby stir. She spoke before Beck could. "You can't hold it," she said. "Not without paper. Not without men willing to say they saw me leave." The man's eyes flicked to her. "We have both." "You have men," she said. "Paper waits." The smile thinned. "Ma'am," he said, "this isn't your fight." She shifted the baby higher. "Everything is." A man reached for a torch. Beck moved then. He didn't draw. He rode straight, at the gate, close enough to smell pitch. A shot cracked, high, warning. The horse shied but held. Beck leaned and kicked the brace. Wood groaned. Iron screamed. Water surged and found its old path with a sound like breath returning to a body. Shouts rose. Someone ran. Someone fell. The torch flared and died in snow. Beck wheeled and fired once, not at flesh, but at rope. It snapped. Boards lurched. Clara did not look away. She did not look down. They rode out with water singing behind them. The bend restored but wounded. The men upstream scattered, anger left hanging in the cold like a smell. Back at the ranch, the horses drank until they shuddered. The trough filled. The land took what it was given and did not say thank you. Beck dismounted slow. His hands shook now. He did not hide it. "They'll come for the child," he said. Clara nodded. "I know." She did not sleep that day. She wrote. She wrote until the tin grew heavy with truth and the ledger had a spine. She wrote names and dates and places, She wrote what she had seen and when. She wrote until her hand cramped, and then wrote some more. If they take him, this speaks. At dusk, a wagon came too fast. It stopped short. A woman jumped down, skirts muddy, eyes bright with fear. "They're saying you're hiding assets," she said. "They're saying the baby's being used." Clara felt the words like a slap. She kept her voice even. "They're wrong." The woman nodded. "They know. They don't care." Night fell hard. Beck set watches double. He did not eat. He did not sit. Clara fed the baby and sang low, the same hymn with the missing verse. Near midnight, the sound came again. Not hooves. Wheels, slow, heavy, coming straight. Beck stood in the yard. "Stay inside," he said. "No," Clara said. He didn't argue this time. The wagon stopped at the gate. Men climbed down. No torches, no smiles. The man with clean gloves stepped forward, papers in hand. "Order," he said, "for the child." The word hit the yard and stayed there. Beck did not move. On what grounds? "Protection," the man said. "This is no place for an infant." Clara stepped out with the baby against her shoulder. "He's breathing," she said. "That's protection." The man did not look at the baby. He looked at the paper. "Ma'am, don't make this worse." "Worse than what?" she asked. "Taking him to starve me into silence?" Beck's hand hovered near his gun. Clara felt it without seeing. She reached into her coat and took out the tin. She held it up. "You take him," she said, "and this goes to every desk in town." The man hesitated. "You won't." "I will," she said. "Tonight." He weighed it. Snow fell. The yard breathed. A second wagon rolled up behind the first. Another man climbed down. This one did not wear gloves. He held his hat like it mattered. "I saw her," he said. "The night of the fire. I saw her run." The man with the remotatin paper turned. "You weren't asked." "I know," the man said. "I'm saying it anyway." More footsteps. Another voice. "I heard the creek stop." A third. "I saw the boards moved." The yard filled without anyone calling. Men and women stood in the cold, breath rising, faces set. Not a mob, a record. The man with the paper folded it. "We'll review," he said. "Do that," Clara said. They left without taking the child. Beck stood very still until the wagon disappeared. Then he bent at the waist and breathed like a man coming up from deep water. Clara touched his arm. He did not flinch. "That was the line," he said. "Yes," she said. "They crossed it." He looked at the people still standing in the yard. "Thank you," he said. It was the first time she had heard him say it. They drifted away, quiet, careful not to turn it into something else. Later, when the house slept, Clara stood by the window with the baby and watched the candle burn. Snow covered the scars for now. The creek ran. The tin lay closed on the table, heavy as truth. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this. They had stopped asking. Morning came thin and brittle, like glass held to light. The ranch woke slowly, as if it had been struck and was checking itself for cracks. Clara sat at the table with the baby against her shoulder. The tin open, papers spread. She didn't read them. She knew them now by the weight of ink alone. Outside, men moved with care, not because they were afraid, but because the ground remembered what had happened. Beck stood at the door, coffee cooling in his hand. He hadn't slept. She could see it in the way he counted the fence posts without moving his lips. "They won't come back today," he said. "No," Clara said. "They'll talk instead." As if summoned, a rider appeared at the far rise, then another. Not fast, not together. Messages, not threats. By noon, town had found its voice. A woman came first, breathless, skirts gathered. "They're saying you forced the hearing," she said. "They're saying the creek's been tampered with." Clara nodded. "It was." The woman blinked. "You're not denying it?" "I'm naming it," Clara said. The woman left, shaken but listening. A man followed, hat in his hands, eyes down. "They say you've turned the ranch into a fortress." Beck answered this one. "It was always a home," he said. "They brought the walls." Word moved faster than horses. By afternoon, the road wore tracks again, some stopping, some passing slow enough to see who stood where. Clara stayed visible. She fed the baby on the porch. She wrote when he slept. She did not hide the tin. Midday bells rang in town. Not church, court. Beck saddled without asking. "You ride," he said. "I know," she said. They went together, the baby bundled, the cold biting clean. The road felt different now, less empty. People watched without pretending not to. Inside the hall, the air was tight with wool and waiting. The clerk sat straighter than before. The men with clean gloves stood to one side, hands empty. That mattered. Clara took the floor when they called her. She did not rush. She placed the tin down and opened it. She did not give them everything. Yet. "I was on my land when it burned," she said. "I ran with my child. I did not abandon anything." A murmur. The clerk raised a hand. "The creek was altered," a man said. "Yes," Clara said, "after it was taken from us." "And you restored it," he pressed. "Yes." Beck spoke then, "to its legal course." The man frowned. "By force." "By work," Beck said. Clara watched the room. She saw who leaned forward and who leaned back. She saw the clerk's pen hesitate. "Bring the witnesses," someone said. They came, one by one, not all brave, not all clean. Enough. "I saw her run," a man said. "I heard the water stop," another. "I saw the gate worked," a third. The man with gloves shifted. "Hearsay," he said. "Pattern," Clara said. The clerk cleared his throat. "We'll recess," he said. Recess meant time. Time meant deals. Beck's jaw tightened. Outside, snow began again, light and careless. Clara stood on the steps with the baby, the town behind her like a held breath. A woman pressed close. "They're angry," she whispered. "They should be," Clara said. "They tried to take a child." The woman swallowed and nodded. A man approached, older, careful. "You won't win," he said softly. "Not clean." Clara met his eyes. "I don't need clean," she said. "I need seen." The hearing reconvened shorter than expected. The clerk read a statement with a voice that wanted to be neutral and failed. "Temporary injunction," he said. Water rights remain as established pending full review. The room exhaled. Not relief, recognition. The men with gloves left first. Outside, Beck stopped walking. He closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, they were steady. "That buys us weeks," he said. "Enough," Clara said. They rode home under a sky that couldn't decide what it was. At the bend, Beck slowed and looked at the water running where it should. He nodded once to no one. Back at the ranch, the work changed. Less bracing, more counting. The ledger stayed open. Clara added names from town, offers made quietly and refused aloud. She kept the key on a cord at her neck. That night, Beck sat across from her and spoke what he had not yet said. "They'll try to make you choose," he said, "between the land and the boy." Clara did not look up. "They already did." "And if it comes again?" he asked. She closed the tin. "Then I choose him," she said, "and I make the land remember." He watched her like a man learning a language too late and fast. "You don't threaten," he said. "You prepare." She allowed herself a small nod. Late, when the house slept, Clara stood by the window with the baby and watched snow fill the dark. She touched the small mark behind his ear and whispered the only prayer she trusted. Not safety, not mercy. Time. Behind her, Beck sat at the table, the ledger open, the candle burning down between them, steady and unafraid. The line had been crossed. The ground had answered. And now everyone knew where she stood. Snow stopped arguing with the ground and began to settle in earnest. The ranch took on the look of something finished for the season. Edges softened. Scars hidden just enough to be dangerous. Clara knew that look. It meant people would move next, not weather. She woke to the sound of paper being folded. Beck stood at the table, ledger open, a fresh page turned. He had written through the night. She could tell by the way the ink darkened at the edges, tired but determined. "They're counting us now," he said. "Who?" she asked. "Everyone," he said. She set the baby down and leaned over the ledger. Names filled the page. Men from town, suppliers, a preacher who had rung the bell twice when he should have rung it once. Beside each name a mark. Not money, not favors, just presence. "They stood," Clara said. "They watched," Beck said. "That's enough for some." Outside, a wagon rolled in without hurry. It stopped at the gate and did not push past it. A man climbed down and waited, hands empty. He did not look at the house. He looked at the ground. Beck went to him alone. "They're offering terms," the man said. "Quiet ones." Beck did not ask what those were. "They'll recognize the water," the man went on, "if you recognize their interest." "No," Beck said. "They'll make it worth—" "No," Beck said again. The man swallowed. "They'll make it hurt." Beck nodded. "I know." The man left with his hands still empty. By noon, the hurt arrived. A notice was nailed to the post at the edge of the property, high enough that it took a man reaching to see it clearly. Clara read it once and did not tear it down. She memorized the words and left them where they were. "Inspection," Beck said, after she told him. "Seizure," she said. "Both," he agreed. Men came in pairs then, careful to keep space between them. They looked at fences and did not touch. They looked at water and did not drink. They wrote and pretended not to see the baby on the porch, the tin in Clara's hands. One man lingered longer than the rest. He wore no gloves. His boots were worn thin. "They say you're reckless," he said, not unkindly. "They say many things," Clara said. He nodded. "They say you won't trade." She met his eyes. "I won't." He hesitated. "If it was just land, it isn't," she said. He left without writing. That night, Beck locked the ledger away and slid the key to Clara. "If they take me," he said, "you go." She closed her fingers around the key. "No." He looked at the baby. "You'll have to." She shook her head. "Not like that." They did not argue. They had learned when words were a waste. Near midnight, the sound came again, wheels slow and heavy. Clara stood before Beck could tell her to stay back. She did not bring the tin. She brought the child. Men stepped down from the wagon. No torches, no papers. One of them carried a sack that clinked when it moved. "We don't want trouble," the lead man said. "Then leave," Beck said. The man glanced at the porch. "We want to look." Clara stepped forward. "You see him," she said. "That's all." The man's eyes flicked to the child and back to Beck. "You're making this worse." "I keep hearing that," Clara said. The sack was set down. It spilled coin onto the snow, bright and wrong. The sound was small but sharp. "For the winter," the man said. "For the boy." The yard went very quiet. Beck did not move. Clara did not look at the money. She looked at the man. "You want me to sell my silence?" she said. The man shrugged. "Call it help." She took a step closer, enough to make him look at the child again. "If I take that," she said, "you take something I can't get back." He shifted. "Everyone takes." She shook her head. "Everyone lives with it." She turned and went inside without waiting. Beck followed. The door shut. The coins lay where they were until the snow took them. The next morning, the coins were gone. No tracks. No note. Just absence where something had been. "They'll say we took it," Beck said. "They'll say that anyway," Clara said. At the hearing that afternoon, they did. The room filled fast. The clerk read charges with a voice that wanted to sound bored and failed. Words stacked up. Interference, coercion, endangerment. Clara listened without blinking. When it was her turn, she spoke once. "They offered money for my child," she said. "I refused." A murmur. Someone laughed and stopped when no one joined. "Proof?" a man asked. Clara reached into her coat and laid a single coin on the table, tarnished, ordinary. "This was left," she said. "I didn't take it." The clerk frowned. "How do we know?" Beck spoke. "Because if she had," he said, "you'd be holding more than one." The room shifted. Not agreement, attention. The clerk cleared his throat. "We'll adjourn," he said. Outside, the air had turned brittle again. Beck mounted and did not look back until they were clear of town. "They're trying to dirty you," he said. "They're late," she said. Back at the ranch, a woman waited by the door, face pale, hands shaking. "They're talking about a writ," she said, "about guardianship." Clara felt the words like ice in her mouth. "On what grounds?" "Safety," the woman said. "Morals." Beck closed the door and leaned against it. That's the next move. Clara nodded. Then we move first. She opened the tin and spread the papers. She added a new page. Names went down. Dates, places, offers refused, threats implied. She wrote until the truth took on weight enough to bruise. I won't let them name him. At dusk, Beck rode out alone and came back with 2 men she had seen at the hearing. They did not sit. They stood by the fire and listened. You want to make this quiet, one said. I want to make it finished, Clara said. The men exchanged a look. There will be a cost. She met it. There already is. They left without shaking hands. Night settled. The candle burned. The baby slept with his mouth open, breath soft and sure. Clara stood by the window and watched the dark hold its shape. Beck came up beside her. They're afraid now, he said. Of what? She asked. He looked at the tin on the table, the ledger locked away, the names written where they could not be erased. Of being seen, he said. She nodded once. Outside, the creek ran steady. The land kept its count. And somewhere beyond the hills, men who had tried to buy a child learned the weight of names. The first thaw came without asking. Snow softened at the edges, turning to a skin that broke underfoot. Water crept back into the low places and stayed there, reflective and patient. Clara watched it from the porch, the baby asleep against her, the tin heavy at her side. Thaw meant movement. Movement meant men who thought winter had done their work for them. Beck came up the steps with mud on his boots and a look that did not belong to morning. They've set the writ, he said. She did not ask what kind. She knew. When? Tomorrow, he said. At dawn. She nodded once. The baby stirred and settled. Clara counted breaths and thought of the coin on the table, the ledger locked away, the names written and waiting. Proof had a way of asking for more proof. They'll say I'm unfit, she said. They'll say anything, Beck said. They'll bring men to say it. Then bring ours, she said. He watched her, weighing something he didn't want to weigh. There's a line, he said. After it, there's no turning back. She touched the tin. We passed that already. By afternoon, riders came with careful eyes and clean hands. They did not enter. They did not smile. One of them carried a leather case and held it like it mattered. We need to see the child, he said. You see him, Clara said, standing where the light caught her face and not the door. From there. The man hesitated. We need to ensure. You need to count, she said. Count his breaths. The man flushed. He counted. He stepped back. At dusk, Beck sent men to town and farther. He sent them to people who had stood without standing, to people who had seen without speaking. He sent them to ask for names and bring them back written. Night came early. Clara fed the baby and sang low, the tune missing its middle. Beck sat at the table and wrote letters he would never send, tore them up, and wrote again. The fire burned clean. A knock came just after dark. Not loud, not soft, correct. Beck opened the door and let a man in who smelled of old paper and cold. He wore a coat that had seen better days and eyes that had seen worse. I keep records, the man said, for a living. Clara set the baby down and listened. They paid me once, the man went on, to misplace a filing. I did. I didn't sleep after. He reached into his coat and laid papers on the table. This is what they want to use. Clara leaned in. The papers named her without naming her. Words curved around her life and bent it wrong. Affidavits, Beck said. Yes, the man said. Purchased. Clara felt something cold settle behind her ribs. Can you prove it? The man nodded. If I speak. And if you do? Beck asked. The man shrugged. They'll ruin me. Clara looked at the baby, then at the man. They already did, she said. You just didn't know it yet. He nodded, slow. Tomorrow, he said. I'll be there. He left without shaking hands. Sleep came thin. Clara lay awake, counting and recounting, the numbers losing their shape. At some point she pressed her mouth to the baby's hair and breathed him in, like she could store it. I won't lose him. Morning broke gray. The wagon came with papers and men who pretended not to see the frost on the ground. Beck saddled. Clara mounted without being told. The hall filled fast. The clerk read the writ with a voice that wanted to sound official and failed. Words fell heavy. Guardianship, temporary, best interest. Clara held the baby and did not sit. A man stood and spoke of danger. Another spoke of impropriety. A woman spoke of morals. Their words stacked like stones meant to block a river. When it was Clara's turn, she stepped forward and did not raise her voice. I ran through fire with my child, she said. I kept him breathing. I fed him. I did not sell him. A murmur. The clerk raised a hand. Beck spoke once. This is a taking, he said. Call it what it is. The man with the leather case stood. I have evidence, he said. The room leaned. He laid the affidavits down and then laid something else beside them. Receipts, dates, names that matched the ledger. They were paid, he said, to lie. The man with gloves laughed. It sounded wrong. Hearsay. The record keeper met his eyes. I took the money, he said. I kept the receipts. Silence went wide. The clerk swallowed. Now, Clara said. The clerk looked at her, surprised. Ma'am, now, she said again. The clerk nodded. The writ is stayed, he said, pending investigation. The words fell like water. Outside, the thaw finished its work. Snow slid from roofs. Water ran where it wanted. Beck stood on the steps and closed his eyes for a beat too long. That won't end it, he said. No, Clara said. It changes it. They rode home under a sky that couldn't decide. At the bend, Beck slowed and looked at the water running clean. He nodded once. Back at the ranch, the work waited. Men fixed what had been loosened. Clara wrote again, adding the morning to the tin, adding the names of those who had spoken when it cost them. Late afternoon brought a different kind of visitor. A woman arrived alone, riding a tired horse, face set like she had already made up her mind. They'll come for the ledger, she said. Tonight. Beck didn't ask how she knew. Quiet, the woman said. No papers. Clara felt the edge of the tin bite her palm. Then we give them something else. Beck looked at her. What? The truth, she said. All of it. They moved before dark. Lanterns hooded. Doors locked that hadn't been locked before. Clara hid nothing. She set the tin and the ledger on the table where anyone could see them. When the men came, they did not knock. They did not shout. They tried the door and found it held. Beck spoke through the wood. "You're late." The door opened anyway. Men stepped in and stopped short at the sight of papers laid out like an offering. Clara stood behind the table with the baby against her shoulder. "You want these chansons," she said. "Take them." The men hesitated. They hadn't planned on that. "You'll take them," she said, "and every name on them will walk into town tomorrow." Beck watched the men watch the papers. He watched fear find its way in. One reached out and then stopped. "No," the man said. "This isn't how." Clara nodded. "It never is." They left without touching anything. Night settled, quiet and wrong. Beck locked the door and leaned against it, breathing like he'd run a long way. "That was the cost," he said. "Yes," she said, "and the proof." She stood by the window with the baby and watched the dark hold. The thaw had finished. The ground was bare and honest again. They had tried to take the child. They had tried to take the water. They had tried to take the truth. Now the truth stood where it could be seen, and it was heavier than anything they could carry. The cold returned at night, sharp enough to make the boards speak. Clara woke to it and lay still, the baby warm and certain against her chest. Outside, the creek ran clean and loud, as if it wanted witnesses. She counted breaths until the numbers felt like a promise again. Beck was already awake. She could tell by the way the house held itself, listening, not sleeping. When she stepped into the kitchen, he stood at the table with the ledger closed and the tin open, papers spread like a hand of cards no one wanted to draw. "They're done pretending," he said. She poured water and set it to boil. "They were done before," she said. "Now they're honest." A rider arrived with the gray of morning, slow enough to be polite. He stopped at the gate and waited to be seen. Beck went out alone. Clara watched from the window, the baby on her shoulder, the steam from the kettle rising and falling like breath. The rider held out a paper. Beck didn't take it. "Say it," Beck said. The rider did. "They want a meeting. Today, noon. Just you." "And her," Beck said. The rider hesitated. "No." Beck smiled without warmth. "Then there's no meeting." The rider looked back at the road, then down at his hands. "They'll come anyway," he said. "They always do," Beck said, and turned back. Clara didn't ask what the paper said. She didn't need to. "Noon," she said. "Yes," Beck said. By late morning, the ranch wore its quiet like armor. Men moved without hurry. Gates stayed shut. The candle burned in the window, though the sun was up. Someone had hung a sprig of evergreen over the door again, needles falling to the floor, green against soot. At noon, wagons came. 2 of them. Clean, measured. They stopped short of the house and waited as if waiting was a favor. Beck walked out first. Clara followed with the baby, not hiding him, not offering him. She stopped beside Beck and stood where the light made her visible and not fragile. A man stepped down from the nearest wagon. He wore no gloves. He held no paper. He smiled like he had practiced. "We're here to end this," he said. Beck said nothing. The man's eyes flicked to the baby and away. "It's gone too far," he said. "No one wants a spectacle." Clara spoke. "You brought one." The man laughed softly. We brought a solution. He nodded, and another man lifted a small chest from the wagon and set it on the ground. He opened it. Inside, money lay neat and heavy, dull gold and folded paper, enough to buy silence for a long time. For the land, the man said, for the water, for your trouble. Beck did not look at it. The man went on. And for the boy, he added, as if that were kindness. The yard held its breath. Clara stepped forward. She did not look at the money. She looked at the man. You want me to take this? She said, and let you take everything else. The man shrugged. You'll be safe. From what? Shiva asked. He hesitated. That was answer enough. Beck's hand rested on the table by the door, fingers spread, steady. He did not reach for his gun. The man cleared his throat. This is the last offer. Clara nodded. I know. She turned and went inside without asking permission. Beck stayed where he was. The men shifted, uncertain. Clara returned with the tin and the ledger. She set them on the table in the yard and opened both. Papers lifted in the light. Names and dates and lines of blue that told the truth whether anyone liked it or not. You can have these, she said. The man blinked. What? You can take them, she said. All of it. Beck watched her, surprise cutting through his calm. You take them, Clara went on, and every copy walks into town before night. Every name on these pages speaks tomorrow. The man laughed, then stopped when no one joined him. You're bluffing. Clara lifted the baby higher. Count his breaths, she said. I don't bluff with him. The man's smile fell away. He looked at the papers like they might bite. You don't understand how this works, he said. Clara's voice stayed even. I do. You need it quiet. I don't. A murmur ran through the men by the wagons. Someone shifted his weight. Someone else looked at the road. Beck spoke then, his voice low. Take your chest, he said, and go. The man stared at him. You'd let her do this? Beck didn't look at the papers. He looked at Clara. It's her choice. Silence stretched. The creek ran. The candle burned. The man closed the chest with a soft click. You'll regret this, he said. Clara nodded. You already do. The wagons turned and rolled away without haste. Dust rose and settled. The money went with them, clean and unused. When they were gone, Beck exhaled like a man who had been holding water in his lungs. That was necessary, Clara said. He studied her. You gave them an opening. I closed a door, she said. They were standing in it. That afternoon, riders came from town, not fast, not slow. They brought word that traveled ahead of them. They're saying you refused a settlement, one said. Yes, Clara said. They're saying you're reckless, another said. Yes, she said again. They're saying you're dangerous, a third added, almost admiring. Clara adjusted the baby's blanket. Good. By evening, the talk had turned. It always did. Words changed shape when they couldn't find a home. They tried to buy her, someone said. They tried to take the child, another said. They failed, a third finished. Night came with a thin moon. Beck locked the doors and left the key in the lock. Clara sat at the table and wrote until the ink went light. She added the last offer to the tin. She added who brought it and when. She added the way the chest sounded when it closed. If they come again, they won't come empty-handed. Late, when the house had settled, Beck sat across from her. They'll change tactics, he said. They already have, she said. How? He asked. She looked at the baby sleeping between them, mouth open, breath soft. They'll stop trying to take, she said. They'll try to wait. Beck nodded. And we? We don't, she said. He watched her a long moment. You're not leaving. No, she said. I'm staying. Outside, bells rang once from town, then stopped. Someone had rung them too hard and thought better of it. Clara stood by the window and watched the dark gather and thin, gather and thin. The land did not forgive. It did not forget. It kept accounts better than any ledger. She pressed her fingers to the tin, then to the child's back, then to the glass. The last offer had been made and refused. What came next would not be bought. Waiting has a sound. It hums under the floorboards and settles into the seams of a house. Clara heard it before she woke, a thin pressure behind the eyes. The baby slept on, breath soft, mouth open. She counted anyway. Outside, the creek ran steady. That was wrong, too steady. Water that never changes is being watched. She rose without waking him and crossed to the window. Snowmelt gleamed on the yard, silvered by moonlight. No tracks where there should have been some. No birds. The candle in the window burned low, the wick bent, stubborn. She turned as the latch whispered. Beck was already there, coat on, gun at his side. He didn't speak. He nodded once toward the back door. The sound came again. Metal, careful. Not a knock. A test. Clara lifted the baby and felt his warmth answer her. She moved the way she had learned to move. Slow, deliberate, not making choices she couldn't finish. She stood where the lamplight caught her face and not the crib. Go, Beck said, barely air. No, she said, just as quiet. A shadow crossed the window, then another. A board creaked, then stilled. The house held its breath. Beck raised his voice, calm and low. You're late. A man answered from the dark. We don't want trouble. That's never been true, Beck said. The back door shifted inward, an inch. Clara saw a hand, then the edge of a blade catching light. The blade withdrew. A pause. Someone laughed once and cut it short. Open up, the voice said. This doesn't have to be hard. Clara stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. You won't come in. The voice turned toward her. Ma'am. She didn't let him finish. Count, she said. Count what? His breaths, she said. And leave. A beat. Then footsteps moved. Not away. Closer. Beck moved first. He kicked the door shut from the inside and set his shoulder. Wood groaned. Clara shifted the baby higher and felt the tin bite into her ribs, like a reminder that truth has edges. The window by the sink shattered inward. Glass sprayed the floor like ice. Beck fired once, high, the report sharp enough to split the night. A body hit the ground outside. Another man swore and ran. Front, Beck said. They moved together. Clara did not run. She walked. Each step counted, the baby's breath a metronome against her collarbone. At the front door, the lock turned on its own. Order, a voice said, muffled by wood. Open. Beck laughed, short. You don't have one. The door shook. Clara felt the baby tense and pressed her mouth to his hair. Hush, she said. A lie. A promise. She reached into her coat and took out the tin. She held it up where the lamplight caught the scratches and dents. You take him, she said through the door, and this walks. The door paused. Silence stretched. A different voice spoke, closer, quieter. We just need to ensure safety. Clara closed her eyes. She saw the fire breathing, the salves, rope biting her waist, the creek running thin and stubborn. She opened her eyes and spoke clear. You touch him, she said, and every name in this box speaks before dawn. A shout rose from the yard. Footsteps ran. Someone tripped. A horse screamed once and went quiet. Beck fired again, not at flesh, but at iron. Something clanged and fell. The door did not open. Minutes passed, or seconds. Time loosened its grip. Finally, the footsteps moved away. The yard breathed again. The house exhaled. Beck stayed where he was until the last sound died. Then he leaned his forehead against the door and let the weight come. His hands shook now. He did not hide it. They'll try again, he said. Yes, Clara said, and again. Yes. Dawn came without color. The yard showed what the night had tried to hide. Broken glass. A dropped hat. Blood in the snow that wasn't anyone's you could name. Tracks leading away, messy and fast. Men arrived without being called. They worked without speaking, setting boards, sweeping glass, righting what had been knocked wrong. Someone brought hot water. Someone brought bread. Someone stood with their back to the road and watched. A rider came from town, pale and breathless. They're saying you staged it, he said. They're saying no one came. Clara held the baby on the porch where everyone could see. They're lying, she said. The rider swallowed. They're filing charges. Good, Beck said. We'll answer. By mid-morning, the road wore tracks again. Not threats, witnesses. A woman stepped forward, hands shaking. I heard the shot, she said. I saw men run. A man nodded. I found the hat. Another held up a bent piece of iron. This came off our gate, he said. Clara wrote it all down. Names, times, what each person had seen and where they had stood. She did not rush. She did not soften anything. At noon, they went to town. The hall filled faster than it ever had. People stood along the walls and spilled into the street. The clerk looked smaller behind his desk. They allege a disturbance, he said. Beck did not speak. Clara stepped forward with the baby and set the tin on the table. She did not open it. They tried to take my child, she said, at night. A murmur. The clerk raised a hand. Proof? Clara gestured. The room answered. I heard it, a woman said. I saw them, a man said. I found this, another added, holding the bent iron. The clerk swallowed. We'll, now, Clara said. The word landed. The clerk nodded. A man at the back stood. He wore no gloves. I was paid, he said, to say nothing. The room leaned. I won't, he said. Another voice. Me neither. A third. They came to my door. The clerk banged the gavel too hard. Enough, he said. And it wasn't. Outside, bells rang once, then twice. Someone had rung them without permission. No one stopped it. The clerk returned pale. An order, he said. Immediate protection. No further action without oversight. The words did not end it. They drew a line. Back at the ranch, the line held. Men stayed through dusk and left in pairs. The candle burned. The creek ran. The baby slept through it all, breath sure and small. When the house finally quieted, Beck sat at the table and put his hands flat on the wood. They crossed it, he said. Yes, Clara said. And they lost, he said. Not yet, she said. But they can't pretend anymore. He looked at her then, at the way she stood with the child, at the tin on the table, at the ledger locked away. You didn't flinch. I did, she said. I just didn't step back. Outside, the night settled, cleaner now. The ranch held. The town talked. Somewhere, men who had tried to take a child learned what it cost to be seen in daylight. Clara stood by the window and watched the candle burn down to a stub and go out. She did not relight it. They had come in the dark. They would not try that again. Morning did not arrive all at once. It seeped in around the edges, pale and cautious, like a witness unsure whether it was wanted. Clara woke before the light found the floor. The baby slept on, one hand open now, the other curled, breath steady. She counted once, then stopped. She knew the number. Outside, the ranch sounded different, not quiet. Held. Men stood where they hadn't stood before, not guarding so much as belonging. Someone had mended the broken pane with clean glass. Someone else had shoveled a straight path from the door to the yard, careful not to erase the tracks that still mattered. Beck came in with snow on his shoulders and a look that had settled into something firm. He set the kettle on without speaking and waited for the sound of water. They sent word, he said finally. She didn't ask who. What kind? The kind that wants to be heard, he said. Not the kind that takes. She nodded. That's new. It won't last, he said. No, she said. But it's enough. They went to town after breakfast, not alone. Wagons fell in behind them without being asked. Horses walked slow, heads down, steam rising. The road filled and did not argue about it. The hall could not hold them. People stood in the doorway and along the steps, boots scuffing, breath white. The clerk looked out at the crowd and then down at his papers like they might tell him what to do. A man stood and cleared his throat. He wore no gloves. His hands shook anyway. This has gone on long enough, he said. There are rules. Clara stepped forward with the baby against her shoulder. She did not raise her voice. There are, she said, and they apply to everyone. The man swallowed. There's a proposal. Beck watched without moving. The clerk read from a page that had been rewritten twice. The claim to the water is affirmed, he said. The prior filings are withdrawn. Oversight will remain. A murmur moved the room. And the child? Clara asked. The clerk hesitated, then looked at the room. No action, he said. No grounds. The words landed and stayed. A man at the back stood. "What about the ledger?" he asked. Clara met his eyes. "It stays," she said. "With whom?" he pressed. "With the truth," she said, "and anyone who needs it." The room did not argue. Outside, bells rang, not sharp this time, but measured, as if someone had learned restraint. People drifted away in small groups, voices low. No cheering, no vows, just the sense of a thing set back where it belonged. On the steps, a woman Clara recognized from the first hearing touched her arm. "You didn't take their money," she said. "No," Clara said. "You could have," the woman said, not accusing. "I did," Clara said. "I took time." They rode home under a sky clearing itself. At the bend, Beck slowed and watched the water run clean and ordinary. He did not nod this time. He simply breathed. Back at the ranch, the work changed again. Not defenses now. Foundations. Someone brought lumber and asked where to stack it. Someone else brought seed and asked where to plant. Clara answered without looking at Beck. Beck let her. By afternoon, a shape had taken form that did not have a name yet. A room cleared. A table set. A corner marked for lessons. Not charity. Use. A man stood awkwardly by the door. "I heard you're taking in," he began. Clara finished it. "Those who need a place to stand." He nodded. "For a season?" "For as long as it takes," she said. He left and came back with a cart. Near dusk, Beck brought papers to the table. He set them down and did not push them toward her. "If you want," he said. She read them slowly. A share, measured and plain. Terms that did not trap. An exit written clean. "You don't owe me," he said. "I know," she said. She signed. Not because she had to, because she chose. Later, when the house had settled and the men had gone to their own beds, Clara stood by the window with the baby and watched the lights move in the yard. Someone had hung evergreen again, this time tied with twine, careful and honest. The candle burned low. Beck stood beside her. "They'll tell stories," he said. "They already are," she said. "About you," he said. She smiled, small. "They always do." He hesitated. "About us." She turned to him then. "This isn't a rescue," she said. "I know," he said. "And it isn't a bargain," she said. "I know that too," he said. She nodded once. That was enough. Night came clean. The creek ran. The land did not forgive. It did not forget. It kept what was given and asked its due. Clara sat at the table and closed the tin for the last time. She did not hide it. She placed it on the shelf where anyone could see it and locked nothing. The ledger stayed where it had always been, spine worn, truth intact. "I'm still here." She carried the baby to his bed and watched him sleep, mouth open, breath soft. She touched the small mark behind his ear and let her hand rest there. Steady. Outside, a wagon rolled past and did not stop. A rider slowed and tipped his hat. Somewhere, a voice laughed and did not stop itself. The ranch held. Not as a fortress, as a place. By morning, people would come. Some would stay. Some would leave. Names would be written and spoken and forgotten. The water would run. The work would begin again. Clara blew out the candle and stood in the dark without fear. What remained was not silence. It was choice.